Hey everybody, it's Check the Effects coming at you with another Minecraft tutorial, and today we're going to be going over a little invention that I like to call the Cascading Stack Circuit. When I'm talking about stacks, this is not what I mean is by the number of items that you have in a full stack, for instance, of items, like you have 64 dirt blocks or 32 stone blocks, half a stack. What I'm actually talking about is a stack in terms of computer terminology. So in other words, first in, last out, or last in, first out. So without further ado, let's get to the tutorial. So here we have our basic setup, and what we're going to do is we're going to call this redstone lamp output number 1 and this redstone lamp output number 2. This is going to be repeater number 1, this is going to be repeater number 2, and this will be your locking repeater, since this is going to lock the repeater over here. And what happens in this case is if I turn the power on, you'll see what happens is that output number 1 turns on first, and then output number 2 turns on last. And if I turn the thing off, output number 2 turns off first, and output number 1 turns off last. So it's basically like a stack concept in a computer system where you have first in, last out, or last in, first out. Or in this case, you have first on, last off, or last on, first off. So that's exactly how this is working there. So what happens in this case is that you have power going to both this repeater and this repeater the moment it turns on. However, there's a slight delay with this one, where this one is set to 1 tick, this is set to 3 ticks. That's just enough time for the power to go from this side of this repeater and go through it, but just before this repeater releases its redstone current over to this repeater here, forcing this one to lock in its state and also release it to the output over here. If I turn this mechanism off, what's going to happen is both of these repeaters end up losing power to their inputs. However, because of the locking mechanism, what happens is this repeater will turn off, and then it'll release the current in this locking mechanism over there, this locking repeater over here, which causes this one to latch or lock. This repeater will keep its state until it's unlocked. So that's why you have this one turning off after this one turns off before this one over here turns off. And that's the basic concept. Now the beauty of this little design is that it's modular and tileable. So you can actually have X number of outputs that you can have in this type of circuit. So if I go ahead and push this lever, you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4. They all turn on in order from left to right. And then if I turn it off, they turn off from right to left. Okay. And it's basically the same concept, except what's happening here is now the one over here has a locking mechanism on it as well, or from here, and then you have another one that has a locking mechanism, and the last one does not have a locking mechanism. And I also did it on a much larger scale over here, as you can see. And if I go ahead and turn this one on, there it goes. Turn it off. There they go, like that. See? So turn it on again. And then you turn it off, and off it goes. So I'm sure there are some people out there that can think of certain applications for this. Also, let me just make a bit of a note here. If you are building anything more than 4 of these, remember that you have to segment your circuit in groups of 4. So what happens here, this is my first segment, and this is my second segment, and this is my third segment, or the beginning of my third segment. And every single time that you add on a segment, you have to make sure that like in this case, your first segment has only 1 repeater on each line going into your outputs, whereas on this line you have 2 repeaters on each line going into your outputs. Also, this was your third segment has 3 repeaters going out into your output. And another thing you also had to consider is where you're going to put your lever or your input, and make sure that there's enough of a delay between this part here and the following segment when it turns on, so that you actually end up with this kind of little effect that's there. Otherwise you can have some problems with the timing on it, so you got to make sure that that's done properly. Typically my advice to you is, if you're going from in this direction, then you should have your repeaters pointing towards the direction in which the outputs are going to turn on. So that's going to be in this direction, and always facing in that direction that's going towards your final output. So that's it for this episode on our tutorial for today. Hopefully this has been informative to a lot of you out there. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. And remember to like and subscribe. This is Check the Effects signing out. Peace.